Now, how many years predate Jesus' birth when Daniel was taken into Babylon? Okay? From Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and all of that to the time of Christ, how many centuries would that be? About 6 or 7 or so. And so the Magi would have to be looking and looking and looking until that time. But they knew exactly when to look because of Daniel chapter 9, 24 through 27. There's a prophecy there of the 70 weeks of Daniel, of when Messiah would come and when he would be cut off, when he would be crucified there, when his generation would end. And so they knew the generation time period of when Messiah was coming, and they were expectant. Herod, however, had no clue. He knew Bethlehem was the place, but he didn't know really the when. Since the 19th century, the majority of theologians have placed the birth of Jesus before the spring of 4 BC, in spite of the fact that most of the church fathers within the early centuries placed his birth from 3 BC to 1 BC. This pre-4 BC placement was due to a reference in Josephus that King Herod died shortly after an eclipse of the moon and before a springtime Passover of the Jews. Astronomers in the last century informed theologians that an eclipse of the moon, which could be seen in Palestine, occurred on the evening of March the 13th, 4 BC. Herod's death was arbitrarily placed within the 29 days from that eclipse until the Passover of that year, without considering the lack of time necessary for the pageantry of a royal funeral. Okay, if I have time, I'll talk more about that. Normally, there are 30 days of public mourning for a royal official, followed by 7 days of private mourning. So that's at least 37 days right there. There are other considerations that have to be taken into account with the death of a dignitary, especially trying to get that in before Passover there. But this is the date, March 13th, 4 BC, that most scholars, but not the ones who are leaning more toward the new research, have adopted for the lunar eclipse of Josephus. This is actually a partial eclipse that's happening on this date. Theologians and astronomers have looked for celestial displays as candidates for the star before that date. However, Ernst Martin builds a convincing case showing that the proper eclipse, which is a total lunar eclipse, occurred on January the 10th, 1 BC. This is the position the museum takes also, is this January 10th, 1 BC total eclipse for the death of, near the death of Herod. You see the reference here at the bottom, Ernest L. Martin, Star That Astonished the World. And I brought a copy, my copy of this book. Ernest Martin, this is the second edition. It's the 1996 edition. The first edition is 1991. And he lays out the case from history, from archaeology, from astronomy, using astronomy software, computer software, where you can move the heavens backward in time and move them forward in time. That's how accurate God's time clock is up in space there. And he brings all of this together to show that the Star of Bethlehem is the conjunction of Jupiter and Venus, shown here on the cover. And we'll talk more about that too. And he places the birth of Christ on September the 11th, 3 BC. Okay, September the 11th, 3 BC. Not before 4 BC, according to this other partial lunar eclipse sighting.